I'd like to call to order this work session of the Board of Trustees of the Monroe County Public Library. We'll start by introducing ourselves. Jamie, you want to start us off?
David Ferguson.
John Walsh.
Marilyn Wood.
Christine Harrison.
Kari Estery.
Thank you. So we have a number of policies and plans and other things to hear about tonight in preparation for our board meeting next week, where we can take action on whatever needs action. I'll turn it over to Marilyn for the disaster recovery for computer systems.
Okay, thanks, John. Our disaster recovery for computer system policy is an internal document due to the sensitive nature related to our computer security. So I sent that in advance. It's not part of our public packet. But the policy itself has to be reviewed on an annual basis. That's a state requirement. And although most of the changes are generally related to vendors, or sometimes it's access or specific people, there were some changes. And if you have questions or concerns or just want to know more about it, I'll be happy to answer those here, or you can give me a phone call or an email. But the changes that were presented to you will be voted on. If there's no additional conversation, will be voted for approval at our meeting next week. Okay. That's all.
Are there any questions about this that are not, dealing with sensitive information about our disaster recovery plan? My reading of it was there weren't any, dramatic changes or
That's correct.
anything. Some cleanup in that and updating of things, but. So we'll vote.
We'll vote next week,
yeah.
right? And then that would be our policy for another year.
And then one of the big items for tonight, our draft 2021 to 2023 strategic plan. And who's going to take the lead on that?
I'm going to start with this, and then I'm going to turn it over to Josh for some discussion. But what I wanted to just preface with is a little bit of background and also a little bit about some of the process so far. But our public library standards require the library to complete a long-range plan, and it should be either 3 to 5 years or a 3 to 5 year plan as needed. And our current plan will expire on December 31st. So a critical piece of any of these plans is community engagement and understanding of community need. And so Josh will be describing for us or share the process and the results that we had from that community input. But you will find that there are other pieces of the strategic plan that are noted on page 1 of the packet. And it's just a draft table of contents. And some of the things, other topics that will be included on the final draft include things like our technology plan and our inventory. And that was previously part of a separate report to the state, but they combined those two reports about the same time as we did it when we did our last strategic plan, so they're all in one now. We'll also be including a long-term maintenance plan and a budget, financial resources, information about our partners and the kinds of partnerships that we have and how it benefits our community, our professional development strategy, among some other things. But the draft that we're sharing tonight includes a pretty good indication of where the library is in 2020, as well as a look back on 2018 and 19, which were the 2 years since our last plan. And it begins to talk about what we will be looking at it in terms of an expression of our community need. So I'm going to invite Josh to talk a little bit about that process and what we learned.
Hi, folks. Can you hear me okay? This is my first public speaking with a mask on instead of a screen. I'm going to talk a little bit about our community input process and just mention a couple of the surprises and interesting things that we learned, and then move on to sort of the process we use to get to a new mission, vision, and values statement. This was one of the sort of strangest community input processes and most affirming in many ways that I've ever been a part of. We were really in the thick of it during the lockdown, and we weren't sure what kind of response or input people would really take the time to give us. We designed a survey. We got input on it from John Kennedy at the IU Center for Survey Research and Development, and he helped us clean it up a lot. And just to give you a little bit of context, we've had vendors help us through these processes in the past where they, for a certain fee, guaranteed us 600 responses. Well, we got 2,671 responses. So that was just phenomenal for us. They just kept pouring in. And, people were at home and they thought about us a lot and they had a lot to say. The survey itself wrapped up Labor Day weekend. We have a lot of quantitative data that is the standard kind of things you ask, and we're processing that and using the software that we used. But we had one sort of free text question that we threw out there: one way Monroe County Public Library can better serve me and my family is. And we got lots of pretty amazing feedback from that. Not surprisingly, clear themes emerged. We sort of grouped them under 4 broad categories: collections, services, programs, and marketing. They all fell pretty cleanly under that. Quite a bit of it was the sort of things we usually hear, where people stand up and say, hey, I really appreciate the children's work you're doing. I really appreciate the outreach work. Keep it up. We'd like to see more, maybe with this particular audience or that. There were some surprising things, though. A huge call out for more ebooks, more audiobooks, specifically, and not surprisingly considering the circumstances we were in. I think Greer mentioned a couple of months ago when we were here, we got a surprising number of requests for more libraries of things. A lot of this had to do with DIY work, personal enrichment kind of stuff, tools, things like that. But there were also calls for library of things that provide more access to technology, specifically in support of personal development, job development, things like that. The usual, more bookmobile stops, things like that. Another strange sort of surprise for some of us was a request to expand in continual virtual programming even after reopening and after the pandemic. So this kind of opened up a new, we thought, well, they can't be here in the room. And that's critical for a lot of people, but a lot of folks are open to this now and into it. So we got some pretty good marching orders from the survey, but we also wanted to reach out to particular stakeholder groups for community engagement. And usually for us, that's a very intensive process of meeting with as many different groups as we can. We didn't think anybody would probably want to meet with us this time, considering the circumstances. We identified 74 community agencies. We sent them links to the survey. We said we'd be happy to meet and discuss with them. A few didn't answer us. Some folks weren't even there to answer the phone, actually, because of the times. But most of them wrote back and said they'd take the survey. We got 12 responses who we met and had conversations with. And again, we saw a lot of support for our traditional areas of service, but a newer and much stronger arc towards the community needs that are going to probably emerge in the next year or two, having to do with really simple things like job development, soft skills, parenting and caregiver skills, adulting, sort of a social service press, a few different calls, and this came up in the survey as well, for providing better access to social services, or even there were requests for having a social worker in the library. One really neat observation came from Efrat, the executive director of the United Way, who pointed out that the fact that the library is seen as a fun place to build skills and competencies rather than a strictly educational environment is a great asset. And it reminded many of us that we tend to get very curricular in our approach, but we can mix that up. Again, many of them, Bloomington Chamber of Commerce, Ellettsville Chamber of Commerce, both really encouraging us to work with people to develop the soft skills necessary for job interviews. Lots of local business owners saying they're getting applicants that need help with this kind of stuff. So that was a really interesting insight for us. We got a lot of input from local county educators about very specific kinds of support they would need in the changing school environments and the remote learning and things we could do for that. So yeah, we had 12 really good discussions and a lot more input added to the survey. So we got that, and we're working now on an action plan for 2021. We've got a draft version of that the leadership team is working through. And right now it's a big question of just prioritizing that and being ready to change in real time. That emerged as an important thing for us service-wise. And so we thought a good place to land that would be in our mission, vision, values, and goals. I'm going to start with the goals. We wanted to create a new goal for the library that a lot of our actions could fall under, and a lot of our reporting back to you would fall under. And it's about this idea that we have to approach the development of our services adaptively and responsively, because it's what we found ourselves doing like crazy all in 2020. So an entirely new goal that we have is to adapt and respond to community and partner needs. It's very simple, but it's there to remind us with what we're doing. Is this what we're hearing? Is this the new need that's emerging? We wanted to keep it to 4 goals, though, so we combined 2 of the older ones. Promote a climate of civility, inclusiveness, and compassion, and provide a safe and welcoming place for all. Those are both still very important. So we just changed them to facilitate and promote inclusive, diverse, and respectful dialogue in safe and welcoming spaces. The third one, we used to have support reading, 21st century literacy, and lifelong learning. What we've been finding is that most people, when they see 21st century literacy, think specifically of technological skills. That's important, but what we're talking about and what we found ourselves being asked for quite a bit was other 21st century skills that are those soft skills that you need for applying for a job, for getting ahead, for finding financial aid. So we added that. Support reading, lifelong learning, technological literacy, and other essential life skills. We wanted to be kind of specific about that. And then the old one, provide free, equitable, and convenient access to information. We changed to provide free and equitable access to information, materials, and services. Because materials and services, we thought more clearly defined what we're doing. And convenient, of course, is an unstated goal for what we do. 2 other, just very quickly, because I don't want to use up all of the time here. The current mission of the library that served us well up to the end of 2020 is the library strengthens our community and enriches lives by providing equitable access to information and opportunities to read, learn, connect, and create. We love this still, but we wanted to add one more element, and it is an impartial access to information and opportunities to read, learn, and connect, and create. Because it's been a turbulent few years, and everybody's feeling stress in the community. We're going through an evolving time, and we really see our role as being that impartial place where everybody can come and we can facilitate safe discussions and safe access for everyone. So we really thought this was a time to add that. The rest of it, we're still very comfortable with. The vision we've had up to this point is a knowledgeable, inclusive, engaged community empowered by the library. We still like that. But we added diverse because we feel that there's a little bit of a difference between inclusive. Inclusive is what we're doing for everyone, but diverse represents the community that we live in. It really is and should be stated, and that's part of our vision for the community. Our values, which guide us, we just kind of combined a few to make it a little bit tighter. We got rid of civil discourse and respect and just made it respectful discourse. Lifelong learning and literacy were 2 separate ones. We made them one, and we added that diversity to one of our values because we honor that among our staff and among our community. Diversity, we added diversity. Yeah. So that's kind of what we're using. Those are the tools and sort of the roadmap as it is now. And again, we're just doing it 1 year at a time, as we did before. So we don't make a task list for 3 years from now. It feels bold and brave to make one for December of 2021. But that's what we're doing. Are there any questions?
I just have comments and a question. I really like the word impartial access because I think we as a community need to know that at the library, no one is going to diss your views, whether you're from the far right, the middle, or the far left. Everyone is welcome here, and I think that's important to note, that the whole spectrum. And the other thing I was wondering, with all the internet and ebooks and stuff, do we happen to have a map where there are internet dead zones in the county? And I don't know if that's the library's place to help at all in those internet dead zones. Obviously, we know they're there because we're doing school with some students in those locations. But I just didn't know what the library's role could be in those internet dead zones, because for lifelong learning, we need internet. So that's just a comment. I have no,
Thank you. Yeah, I wrote that down to look in. We've been doing great business with our hotspots, and I think they at this point reach everywhere. But a heat map of that would be really good to have. So I'll look into that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So there are places where you can't get broadband to your house, but the hotspots will work?
I don't know.
That was a problem early on. We switched vendors, and I think that's been addressed. But that's something that I can't answer definitively. It's a good call to look into.
It's actually a really good question for those people who might be checking them out, if we know if there might be dead spots, so we'll follow up on that. So as Josh said, as we did the last time, these goals will guide the actions that we are working on right now, and in the report in December, it will be full, and it will be an action item that we will approve that would then go to the state library as our long-range plan. In that report, we will include the 2021 action items, and then in successive years, I'll share with you what those items are for each year. But it does give us, by working on a year at a time, it does really give us the opportunity to be a lot more agile and, responsive to the public, because who would have known, 2020 would have been this. So we can make changes if we need to.
Yeah, I think it looks good. It's very similar to the last one, which served us well, but there are some subtle and important changes, informed by the study and your work. So thank you to everyone who worked on this. Other comments or questions? Now, would this be ready for approval at our next meeting?
No, it will come in December.
Yeah.
Oh, and I just want to, a lot of people on staff worked on this, but we had a fantastic team, about 7 or 8 people.
Yes, thanks to all of them.
Thank you. Next, we have policy 2.04, pre-employment and criminal history checks. Is Kyle here? Oh, there you are.
And I'll give you just a brief background on that. Excuse me, Kyle. So in 2020, and this is part of Senate Enrolled Act 410, all public libraries must adopt a criminal history policy before December 31st. So this is now a requirement for a policy that will cover all individuals over 18 who are either employed or volunteer at the library.
Okay. So we actually had a pre-employment interview, section 2.04, but it was only 2 sentences. So am I on? Okay. So this really added to it. But the primary things the legislatures were looking for is a safety check for any library employee or volunteer who worked and came in contact with our patrons, especially children. So a large part of this was the driver was, making sure we were catching sex offenders as we screen people for employment or volunteers. This now includes volunteers. While we did state of Indiana checks for volunteers, we now be expanding that in more of a national search. We will also be conducting background checks every 5 years for our active staff and volunteers. So if you've been here for 5 years, we will begin a rotation where everybody gets checked periodically just to keep us in line. And I know staff were a little concerned about this. I talked with the union, and I was really being clear about, we do fair chance hiring. We're all about safety in the library. We're also not looking for people to have infractions that are not job-related and feel that they're going to be punished for that. That's not what this is about. It has to be job-related. I do this process on a continual basis with hiring. I always make sure the person has a copy of their report. If there's a concern, talk to them about it and make sure they get it corrected if it's not correct. I've seen that a lot. So we make sure it's job-related. We're not looking for bad people. So we always engage them. And I think that this will be a smooth implementation. And I think after the employees heard what this was really about and that it was a mandate from the state, that was really important. Any questions? Okay.
I guess I'm there again, glad that you do. What did you call it? Second chance? Is that
Fair chance.
Fair chance. So someone who has some sort of something on their record that has nothing to do with their job, it wouldn't
Right.
matter whatsoever, correct?
Right. If you sped through Martinsville, it's not probably related to your job. Or what I sometimes see is that expunged records don't really get expunged.
Oh,
So that's important too. Okay.
Do we have a lot of volunteers who do custodial or facilities maintenance activities?
I think that's more of a seasonal thing, and sometimes like the Boy Scouts come to lay
Oh, I
mulch for us, those type of things. Marilyn, you work with Brian more on that. Is it?
Yeah, I think this was meant for a couple of things. There are times when we have, Ivy Tech's O'Bannon Day of Service, where we'll have large groups of people, or occasionally other employers encourage their staff to participate in some sort of a organized service day. The other thing that this is, and this is somewhat related to the second chance too, but this one is, we will have people who come, who ask to volunteer with us from probation or for their, what's it called? Their community service hours. And so those are those people that would work directly with building facilities and not be in contact with individuals in the library.
Who qualifies as a volunteer? So when you were talking about like these large groups or organizations that come in that may not necessarily interact
That's correct.
with the patrons, they would not
Yeah.
be included in this.
That's
We're
correct.
talking about people who would interact with patrons and other staff and.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
They're never
Vital
alone with
volunteer.
anybody.
Yeah, those
Vital
people would all
tutors
go through the
are
process.
volunteers.
Vital volunteers would be, they would go through this process.
Any other questions? So we'll vote on this
At
next week.
Mhm.
And Kyle, you get to stay with
Stay a
us
bit.
for the insurance, which is always exciting, or,
And I'm going to give you a long and storied beginning to this one. So, every year, we anxiously await for what we're going to hear about our insurance premiums and how they're going to change. And in the past few years, we've been really fortunate. In 2016 and 2017, there was no increase at all. In 2018, there was a 2% increase. In 2019, it was 3.1. Last year, it was a reduction of 4.95. But based on our usage and other factors this year, our rates are going to raise, and they're going to go up 7.5%, 7.54%. But there's a little bit more information about the rate increases that's helpful to know, and that is that the insurance premium percentages, the 7.54, is calculated across all of the plans for a single overall cost increase. The rates aren't distributed across all of the plans we provide evenly. So for instance, we have a 7.54% increase, but our PPO premium was significantly reduced, and our high deductible plan was significantly increased. And those went between down 16.1% and up 16.2%. So depending upon where the plans and where people were actually, where they had signed up, the changes were very different. So up until this year, the library's been paying a fixed amount for each staff member and 15% of the cost of any dependent plan. But that fixed amount has really become pretty arbitrary because it's not a reflection of the cost of the insurance. And so this year, we're moving to what I think is a more practical and sustainable approach, which also takes into consideration the high cost of dependent coverage. And so this year, our rate structure will change to a percentage of the coverage for the premium rate of each plan. And we can do that because we would be having a simultaneous reduction in the amount of the contribution that we make to the health savings accounts, which in the past was in the neighborhood of about $60,000 that was being contributed. And instead, that money will be going directly to the cost of premiums for staff, which we think is more responsive because it affects staff's take-home pay, and it's also a lot easier to describe and explain what the benefit is of our plan. So Kyle's going to describe the process that we went through to get here a little bit and just tell us all about the differences in the plans coming up.
Right. So this year, when JA Benefits put this out for bid, the claims that we had were really high. This has just been one of those years where we blipped really high on our experience. So when they put it out to Anthem, they quoted 58.4% increase. And then United Healthcare quoted 43.06 increase, and IU Health declined to provide us with a quote. So that's not good news. So of course we worked with JA Benefits, and initially SIHO gave us a quote of 18%. We continued to work with JA Benefits, and that's one of the reasons we're doing this in November instead of October, because we were able to renegotiate, and SIHO's final offer was the overall 7.5% rate increase. Then we began thinking about, as Marilyn referred to, how we review our distribution of monies across this. Everyone agreed that a good solution would support lower premium costs across the coverage types, especially for we've been focused on the employee only, but for the employee and child, spouse, and family, they often were paying much higher rates. Understandably, that their rates are higher because they're covering more people, but it was time to make this change. So all of our medical benefits remain the same, except for the $2,800 plan for the HSA, and this is just a technical thing. It moved from, well, it's not. It moved from being to an embedded plan, which means all of the people, you need one, or if you have multiple coverage there for a family, spouse, whatever, you have to have everybody, the individuals, meet their own deductible up to their out-of-pocket maximum, instead of you know, I just need to meet my minimum, and if I go over, I mean maximum, if I go over, then that applies to my family member too. So it's a change, and we'll be clear with people that have that plan, what that means. The Activate Clinic came in at 3%. Dental and vision, we recommend staying with HRI Dental. We're still have one more year of a rate hold. There's no change there. Vision, we heard a lot of feedback from our staff last year about what their providers would accept, and they weren't accepting this one vision plan as much as we thought. So we've worked with HRI, and they offered to allow us to move to the iMed network. This covers almost all the people we heard complaints about, you know, they don't cover. So it's like, okay, this is the plan we need to be in. And they agreed to do that, and we still have our 3-year rate hold with them. So it's gone up a little bit. People, instead of paying, I think it's $2.92, will pay $3 for the employee only on a biweekly basis. I mean, yes. But I think that'll make them happy. We'll continue with our AUL benefits with a 2-year rate hold, and our ancillary voluntary paid benefits of Allstate, FSA, COBRA, and prepaid legal will continue. So we met with the union, and we were like, okay, this is very complicated, and we want to help everybody understand why we're making this change. And they saw the redistribution, and they were very supportive of it. They very much want to help their coworkers, the ones that are, have spouse and child coverage and families. So it's no direct money out of people's pocket, which is wonderful. They will have less of an HSA contribution, but the benefit is that we're spreading the benefits across all of our staff. You have any questions?
So a summary would be, or it's more complicated than this, but before everybody got the same amount, regardless of whether you were a family or single employee.
Right.
And now, by not putting all that, the equal extra amount, in the health savings account, we're helping bring down the cost for people with families.
Right. And a lot of that's based on the carriers trying to, they change it every year because they're chasing, okay, where do we want you to, and which plan do we want you to enroll in? We're going to make that more attractive. Well, and that just plays, havoc with how we were providing benefit support to our staff. Now it's distributed more evenly. Mm-hmm.
Do you have to belong to the clinic as well as your insurance plan?
We do include that, yes.
Okay.
So the numbers you're seeing actually includes the clinic in that.
Okay.
So it's not an additional
So
fee.
if-
We also offer it as an à la carte, so to speak, for our staff that don't have health insurance through us.
Okay,
Or
but
what-
otherwise, if you take the PPO plan, you automatically have to pay the clinic fee too, and then you can go wherever you want.
Yeah, for your regular insurance, go wherever you want, but you also have access to the clinic.
Okay.
And,
But the employees don't pay, the clinic is included
Yes.
in their thing. The thing
Right.
at the bottom is a voluntary extra clinic?
correct.
Yeah,
For people not covered by the health insurance.
I see. So those who don't get the health insurance can still get the clinic?
Correct.
But if you get the health insurance,
You get
the
it.
clinic's thrown in?
That's correct.
Right.
And if you just do the clinic, that's okay.
Yes. If you pay that à la carte.
That means you have health insurance.
Yeah. Yeah, so we have, if you'll look under here, we actually cover 75% of the clinic for our part-time staff that are 15, 20, and 25 hours that don't have access to our health care. And then if a employee wants to add a dependent, or they don't have our insurance, but they want access to the clinic, they can do that, and we cover that at 50%.
So am I reading this right? And for all the plans, if it's for employee only, they don't have any premiums?
Correct.
100% covered.
Okay. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm glad we can do that.
Yeah.
And I'm glad, I'm probably biased because I have 4 kids, but I'm glad we can help out, you
Right.
know, families more. I think we want a diverse workforce, which includes, you know, different family makeups and that. And it can become the case where, you know, someone with a family can't afford to work here if we
Right.
can't contribute to those higher insurance premium costs that a family has, so.
And we've increased the number of families over the years. I mean, it was really low when I came in, and now we're up to 8 that take our plan. Okay.
Are there other questions or comments on the proposed health insurance package or overall insurance package?
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank
Kyle.
you.
And so this will also be an action item for
Correct.
next week?
Correct.
Thank you. Well, we were pretty efficient there, covered a lot of stuff. It's now time for public comment. If there are any members of the public who would like to address the board, please come to the podium, state your name, and share your thoughts with us. Seeing none, we are adjourned.
Thank you.